Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories. Evan Larson couldn't help but smirk as he wiped the sweat from his brow. Earlier that day, he'd been promoted to shift supervisor at Wilkins Packaging, effective immediately. The cherry on top was that he'd be working the night shift for the foreseeable future. While most folks dreaded the night shift, it suited Evan just fine. His daughter Emily was a senior in high school, active in several sports and clubs. By working nights, Evan could attend her events without missing work. He'd done the night shift plenty of times over the years and had a routine for sleeping during the day that made it all manageable. That's why he was crawling across roof trusses in his attic on a warm September afternoon. He'd been given Tuesday and Wednesday off with pay after being informed of the promotion, which gave him a chance to rest and get ready for his new role starting on Friday night. Evan had long planned to convert the space above his detached garage into a small apartment. It would become his sanctuary, a place where he could sleep undisturbed during the day, avoiding the usual interruptions that come with trying to sleep while the rest of the world is awake. Evan was running a cable to get internet access in his apartment since the Wi-Fi signal from the house didn't reach that far. He decided to place an extender at the end of the house attic nearest the garage, hoping it would provide a strong signal in his apartment. As he worked on uncoiling the wire along the attic, Evan heard faint sounds coming from inside the house. It was early afternoon, so his wife, Linda, should have been at work, and their daughter Emily was visiting Linda's parents for a few days. The house should have been empty. Evan crawled closer to where the noises were coming from. After moving about 10 feet, he realized the sounds were coming from his bedroom. Conversation became more distinct as Evan positioned himself over an old, unused air vent in the ceiling. Linda had complained the vent blew cold air on her at night, giving her neck aches. He had installed a new one as far from Linda's side of the bed as possible, but hadn't bothered to remove the old vent, which would have required patching the hole. Evan had left it there, not connected to any ductwork. He gently lifted the fiberglass insulation covering the attic floor and slowly uncovered the vent. His heart dropped when he saw his wife of 17 years moving under a skinny man with a ridiculously pale rear end. As much as it hurt, Evan couldn't look away. It was like watching a car crash on that had once been his marriage. The couple had been grunting for a few minutes before Evan's brain finally caught up with what his eyes were seeing. He set his phone to video and carefully placed it on the vent so the camera had a clear view of his marital bed. "Love how snug you are," said the guy between Linda's legs. "Does your husband ever tap this grade A steak, or is he more into chicken nuggets?" "I've asked you not to mention Evan," Linda protested, though it sounded weak to Evan's ears. "This isn't about him. He's a good lover and a great father." "Yeah, sure he is. I'm about to drop a big load inside you right here in his bed, yet you say you're happy with how he treats you. What's wrong with this picture? I don't know why I let you talk me into doing this here, right there. There's no chance of being caught at your place." "I'm going to explode," moaned Linda. The man covering Linda suddenly tensed up. The couple became very still for a moment before the guy rolled off her. "See how intense it is when you take risks?" asked Linda's lover. "Doing it at my place is fine, but screwing you in your marital bed takes it to another level." Evan recognized the man once he flipped onto his back after finishing. It was Derek Jenkins, a driver for the courier service where both he and Linda worked. He'd recently divorced and had a son in Emily's class. "That sounds terrible," Linda replied, though without any real conviction. "You just wanted to do it in my bed because it turns you on to think you're getting one over on Evan. You act like this is some sort of contest." "It is a contest, at least for men." Derek chuckled softly. "You're a sexy woman and the sex is great. But knowing you're married and I'm screwing you in your husband's bed makes me the winner. It feels incredible. It wouldn't feel so great if Evan caught us here. I don't know why I agreed to this, but it won't happen again." "I'm worried he'll find out. It would ruin my marriage," Linda admitted. "Let's make a deal," suggested Derek. "As long as you keep him out of your bed, I won't push to do it here again. But once he gets between your legs, we'll have to come back so I can reclaim my place as top dog. I'm not going to refuse Evan, as my husband." I can't just shut him out and expect him to be okay with it, Linda reasoned. He's a man and wants sex regularly. Do what you have to, but remember, I'll be back in this bed as soon as possible. If he screws you, maybe it'll turn you on as much as it does me, Derek replied. Evan had parked his car inside his detached garage out of sight. Linda had no idea he was home and certainly didn't know he was listening to her conversation. His face was drenched in sweat, which dripped steadily onto the insulation covering the attic floor. He forced himself not to vomit, knowing how hard it would be to clean up and how awful it would make the attic smell. He remained still as he listened to the couple get dressed and leave. As he made his way back to the ladder, Evan thought about what he had just learned. Some slimy jerk was screwing his wife, and she was even planning to withhold sex from him to keep this guy happy. Evan managed a grim smile as he decided that Linda wouldn't have any trouble keeping him out of her bed because she would never have his body inside her again. He mulled over his situation while taking a shower and quickly made some decisions. He wouldn't let Linda know he was aware of her infidelity. Emily had 1 year of high school left, so Evan decided his primary focus would be his daughter. He'd no longer concern himself with Linda. She was no longer his priority. Why should he care about her when she clearly held him in contempt? He wasn't willing to leave the house he had spent 12 years remodeling so some sleazy jerk could live there comfortably while screwing his wife. Linda hadn't seemed inclined to seek a divorce, so Evan decided he'd try to hang on until Emily graduated. There was one thing he knew he'd need: his apartment would have to be finished much sooner. Evan decided to include some major upgrades. It wouldn't just be a place to sleep during his night shifts. It would become his living quarters for the next year. He'd need a small kitchen and a full bathroom. By the time Emily graduated and headed off to college, Evan would have had time to figure out his next move. To that end, he called some contractors he knew and scheduled appointments for estimates. He decided to hire professionals to complete the work quickly and efficiently. His promotion would easily cover the expenses. For the first time in his life, Evan realized that time was more valuable than money. If he saved $1, half would be Linda's. He was done with his old way of thinking. He'd always tried to do as much of the work on his home as he could, thinking it would benefit his family. That all changed when he saw Jenkins screwing Linda. He was going to ensure Emily's college education was fully funded. Beyond that, Evan was going to rebuild his life and have some fun while doing it. He no longer felt any allegiance to his cheating wife. Evan had regained control of his emotions by the time Linda walked in after work and found him sitting in the kitchen. "You're home early? Did you get off work early for some reason?" Evan looked at Linda and realized she looked different to him. She had some lines and wrinkles on her face and had put on a few extra pounds. Why hadn't he noticed before? Had his love for his wife blinded him to her flaws? It saddened him to think about his sudden change of attitude toward Linda, but it had been her decision to cheat. He was simply reacting. "Yeah, we're in a bit of a bind at work. They asked me to work nights for a while, starting tonight. They let me come home, pack a lunch, and rest. I'll be headed back in later. They shouldn't ask you to work nights after a day shift, even if you had some time off during the day," Linda reasoned. "You'll be exhausted. At least lie down and sleep for a few hours." "Good idea," Evan responded. "I'll just go crawl between the sheets." "Wait," Linda insisted far too loudly as she remembered the state of the bed. "I just remembered I need to wash the bed linens." "Okay," Evan responded calmly, grimly chuckling to himself at Linda's discomfort. "I'll just use the bed in the guest room. No need to get so worked up." A few hours later, Evan left the house as if he was going to work. He stopped at a local sports bar and watched a baseball game, enjoying a few beers. He had placed an air mattress in his future apartment. Once he was sure Linda would be asleep, he parked inside the garage and went up the stairs to his waiting air mattress. He slept surprisingly well. One of the contractors Evan interviewed the next day was between projects and offered a great price if Evan would agree to start immediately. 2 weeks would see the contractor's crew moving to a new development miles away. Evan agreed and signed the contract for the work to begin Monday morning. His night shift ran from Friday night through Tuesday night, and the plant would shut down Wednesday evening and start up again Friday night. Linda knew Evan wouldn't have to work Tuesday night, so she was surprised when he got ready for bed and headed for the guest room the next night. "Why are you going to sleep in the guest room? We won't see much of each other while you're on night shift, so why don't you sleep in our bed?" asked a perplexed Linda. "Since I worked the night shift last night and slept a few hours this morning while you were at work, I'm not very tired. I'm going to watch a baseball game and maybe a movie after that," replied Evan, sticking to his planned excuse. "I'm trying to get used to staying awake at night and sleeping during the day. I don't want to ruin your sleep. Unless you're thinking we should, get it on," Evan suggested, raising his eyebrows suggestively. Linda's reaction was exactly what Evan had expected. If he hadn't heard her conversation with her lover, he might have missed her brief deer-in-the-headlights look before she gave a weak smile. "I'm pretty tired tonight." "Maybe we could just cuddle a little and go to sleep," Linda responded. "Besides, Emily's home tonight. She might hear us." "Cuddling won't cut it for me," Evan replied. "Once I get you in my arms and feel those, assets of yours, I'll want to do more than just cuddle. If you're ruling out anything more, I'll just remove the temptation and sleep in the guest room. You never worried about Emily hearing us before, so don't bother making up excuses." "I'm not the type to push myself on anyone," Evan added, making his point clear. "I know that, Evan. You're a good man. I'm just tired and don't feel romantic. I hope you understand." "I understand more than you think. Let me know when you're in the mood. If I'm in the mood at the same time, we might get together." "Good night," Evan retorted, as he turned and headed toward the guest room, leaving Linda with a confused expression on her face. Evan spent an hour tossing a football with Emily on Wednesday, then did some yard work. When bedtime came around, he headed down the hall to the guest bedroom. Linda watched his back as he walked away, puzzled by his behavior. Evan went into work early Thursday night to prepare for his role as shift supervisor. By the time the production workers started arriving, he felt confident about his work situation. He hadn't bothered to tell Linda he had been promoted. She had her secrets, so he didn't feel any obligation to share everything with her. His shift went smoothly, and he was well received by those working under him. He decided he had a great group of people on his shift. The new position carried more responsibility, but Evan had seen all the problems before and knew how to handle them. He settled into his job with minimal adjustment or difficulty. Linda had already left for work, and the construction crew was setting up when Evan arrived home Monday morning. He spoke briefly with the job foreman to ensure they were on the same page, then went inside and fell asleep immediately. However, he was awakened several times by the loud noises from the crew working on his apartment and once by the ringing phone. Cursing himself for forgetting to turn off the ringer on the landline in the guest room, Evan answered with a groggy hello. "I'm sorry, Evan. Did I wake you up?" asked his mother-in-law, Gloria. "Is that why you called?" snapped Evan, annoyed. "To find out if I was sleeping?" "No need to get an attitude," responded Gloria. "I just wanted you to know that Henry and I heard you're on the night shift, and we won't be disturbing you. If you need us to do anything for Emily while you're resting, just let us know." Evan hung up without responding. As he unplugged the phone from the wall, he considered just how thoughtless people could be. It took a few minutes, but he eventually fell back asleep. The construction crew finished their work in less than a week. Evan marveled at how the contractor had completed the entire remodeling project in 4 days. It would have taken him 4 months. When he woke up Saturday afternoon, he drove to a furniture store and ordered a king-sized bed, a small kitchen table with 4 chairs, and a small sofa. Next, he went to an appliance dealer and selected a large flat-screen TV, a refrigerator, an oven, and a microwave. By Monday afternoon, his bachelor pad, as Evan thought of it, would be ready for him to move into full-time. He chuckled at how perplexed Linda had been when she came home from work Monday to find a crew of men bustling around the detached garage. She approached Evan as he was chatting with the job foreman and insisted on a private conversation. "I have them finishing an apartment over the garage," Evan revealed. "I want a place where I can sleep during the day without people barging in or calling. I'm having it double insulated to minimize noise. There won't even be a landline. Since I'll be working nights for some time, I figured it would be a huge benefit to have a place where I can rest without putting you and Emily out. You won't even know I'm around." Not know you're around? Linda repeated. You're my husband and Emily's father. We're supposed to know you're around. I'll be going to Emily's soccer practices and games. I'll bring her home afterward, so she and I will spend plenty of time together. Don't worry about that. We'll all still have dinner together. I told you a few days ago to let me know when you were in the mood for some special attention, but you haven't taken me up on my offer yet. Are you asking me to scratch that itch tonight? You're being such a jerk. Husbands are expected to do more than just screw their wives when they feel like it. We expect conversations, seduction, and sharing ideas as well as problems. Marriage isn't just about sex, and you know that. Don't lecture me about what makes a good marriage, Evan cautioned. I'll put the effort I make into this marriage against yours anytime. This setup will work fine. All you need to do is let me know when you want me in your bed. I'm not some damn cow that needs or wants servicing, Linda snapped. You won't be doing any servicing until you make a sincere apology. I'll want a nice evening out at a good restaurant along with that apology. Evan broke into a big smile and simply walked away, leaving Linda utterly baffled. He was making it easy for Derek Jenkins to keep insisting on having sex in her marital bed, but Linda was worried about Evan's attitude. He just wasn't his usual self. He was ignoring her, and that concerned her. He had always been a very attentive husband. She made up her mind she'd give Evan a night to remember once he apologized for his crass behavior. She knew he wouldn't be able to go much longer without sex. A man can't go from getting laid 2 or 3 times a week to nothing and be happy. Linda was confident he'd come around. He'd been that way since they first met. He was far too young to lose interest in sex. Evan had completely moved into his new apartment by the following Thursday. The coming weekend would give him 3 nights off due to the long weekend. Emily's senior year would start the following Monday. How would you two like to go to a Mavericks game this weekend? Evan asked at dinner on Wednesday. They're playing the Wildcats and fighting for the championship. It should be a great series. Seriously? That would be amazing. Thanks, Dad, Emily gushed. You know I'm not into baseball that much, Linda grumbled. I'll pass on that offer. You'll find something to do around the house. I bet you will, Evan muttered under his breath, loud enough for Linda to hear. It's settled. Emily and I will go to the Saturday night game. Wow, I can't wait to tell Lisa about this, Emily exclaimed. She'll be so jealous. She's a big Wildcats fan. Her family used to live in Northview. Why don't you invite her along? Evan suggested. Baseball's more fun when you watch it with friends, especially when they're fans. I'll call her right now. Thanks, Dad, Emily replied excitedly as she rushed off to get her phone. You certainly made Emily's day, Linda observed. Baseball is a great way to bond with the kids. Lisa's a nice, polite girl. Lisa? Her real name is Lisa? Evan asked, shaking his head. No wonder she has a nickname. What kind of parent names a girl Lisa, unless they hate her or something? Emily told me Lisa's father died of a brain aneurysm 2 years ago, Linda continued, ignoring her husband's comment. She and her mom moved here this summer to be closer to her grandparents. They're older and in failing health. I'll just call her Lisa and pretend I never heard her real name, Evan declared, just as Emily rushed back into the room. Lisa's mom said she can go, Emily announced, almost giddy with excitement. This is going to be awesome. Saturday afternoon, Evan pulled his car into the driveway of a nice ranch house in a good neighborhood. Before he could even stop, Lisa was racing out the door. She jumped in next to Emily as soon as the car was safely parked. Mr. Larson, Mom says she wants to meet you before we leave. I guess she wants to make sure you're not some kind of serial killer or something, Lisa offered, looking slightly embarrassed. Sorry about that. No problem, Evan replied as he climbed out of the car, walked to the house, and rang the bell. A slender, rather plain woman about Evan's age opened the door. With a quick glance, Evan noticed her legs were her best feature strong and perfectly shaped. Her casual shorts showed off a lot of them. Her stomach was flat, and her chest was modest, barely pushing her top away from her body. My legs look pretty good compared to the rest of me, don't you think? Lisa's mom asked, much to Evan's chagrin. Well, yeah, Evan stammered once he saw the grin on the woman's face. You've got a great pair of legs. Do you think I should let my daughter go to a baseball game with a man who checks out every woman he sees? The woman challenged, still smiling. I'm trying to raise a gentleman. Evan saw the laughter in the woman's eyes and decided to play along. What you're really asking is whether you should let your daughter go anywhere with a man who thinks appreciating women is one of life's great pleasures, Evan replied with a grin. She needs to learn how to do it right. I'll show her what to look for and how to be discreet. I certainly hope you'll be less obvious during these life lessons you're going to give my daughter, the woman countered, still smiling. The first thing I'll teach her is to smack anyone who calls her Lisa, except her mom, of course, Evan joked. I see my daughter is going to learn to be violent with people who use her given name and how to appreciate men's legs. Does that about cover it? The woman teased. Not even close, Evan responded. I'll show her the fine art of judging guys' bums and chests without being too obvious. It's important she gets a well-rounded education and doesn't focus solely on one attribute. That's a relief, Lisa's mom replied, gaining even more respect from Evan. Have a great time, and be sure Lisa calls if you're going to be late. My name's Helen, by the way. Seriously, Helen? What do your friends call you? Evan asked. Oh, for my male friends, I answer to Kitten, Raven, Candy, or Bubbles. My girlfriends call me Helen, she replied with a straight face. Sounds good to me. I'm Evan. We're going to be friends, so I'll call you Kitten. I kind of like that name. Why am I not surprised? Helen replied before breaking into a hearty laugh. Lisa can go with you any time. I love your sense of humor. Emily is a very polite young lady, so I was pretty sure her parents would be fine. Thanks for inviting her to the game. We're a baseball family. I used to go to as many Wildcats games as I could. My father even played in the minor leagues before I was born. He was pretty good, just not quite good enough, Helen added. Lisa's a great kid, so it's no problem. I'll keep an eye on her and make sure she gets back home in one piece, Kitten. Have a nice day. Is that nickname going to stick? I was joking, Helen protested. You'll always be Kitten to me, Evan replied as he turned and headed back to the car. Evan had a relaxing day at the game. Lisa managed to catch a foul ball. Both girls ate too many hot dogs and drank too much soda. They fell asleep in the back seat of the car before Evan even managed to exit the parking lot. When they reached Lisa's home, Evan gently shook the girl awake and escorted the sleepy teen to her front door, where Helen met them with a beaming smile. She may have had too many hot dogs and sodas, Evan admitted. Of course she did. She was at a ball game, Helen replied. Thanks so much for taking her and bringing her back safely. It was my pleasure. Lisa's a great kid, Kitten. I'll see you at the next game. Evan settled into a routine that worked well for him. He would get home, have a small breakfast, and then sleep from 8:00 a.m. to 2:00 p.m. With the extra soundproofing and blackout curtains on his windows, he usually slept soundly. Linda occasionally complained about him always sleeping in his apartment, even on weekends, but she dropped the subject as soon as Evan asked if she needed his attention. Evan figured she was truly worried about Derek insisting on sex in her bedroom and being caught. That suited Evan fine. It indicated she wasn't contemplating asking for a divorce at the moment. His goal of staying married until Emily graduated high school seemed within reach. Because he was a supervisor and getting less exercise, Evan bought a home gym machine that was advertised as giving a complete body workout. To his pleasant surprise, it performed as advertised as long as he used it diligently. He attended all of Emily's soccer practices, and soon the coach had him working with a few of the kids off to the side while the coach ran drills with another group of players. Emily was a pretty good player and showing signs of improvement, but Lisa was the real surprise to Evan. At the start of the season, she showed some talent but was tentative and timid. Evan worked with her as much as he could. They even spent a few hours on weekends practicing at the local park. Evan decided since he wasn't having sex, he might as well take the edge off by playing soccer with the girls. As Lisa's confidence grew, so did her level of play. By the season's halfway point, Lisa was the starting forward and playing at a high level. Emily was the team's top defender and a key player. Evan was tremendously proud of both girls' accomplishments. One thing Evan couldn't help but notice was the attention some of the other girls' mothers started paying him. For some reason, his jokes actually made them laugh. His efforts with the kids were constantly praised. A few mothers would bake something for the team, but they always made sure he received a piece of whatever it was. Emily's friendship with Lisa and the time Evan spent with the girls naturally led to him spending more time with Helen. Evan thought of her as a smart friend with a great sense of humor. He decided to ask Helen if she had noticed the increased interest the mothers were showing him. "I might be off base here, kitten, but I have to ask you something personal," Evan began. "Almost a B cup," Helen responded quickly. "What? I don't get it," Evan admitted. "When men preface a question to a lady by saying it's personal, aren't they usually going to ask her about her bra size?" Helen teased. "Well, yeah, that's usually true," Evan chuckled. "But in this case, I was going to ask if you've noticed some of the mothers treating me differently the last few weeks. Do you think they seem a little friendlier lately?" "Well, aren't you Mr. Observant?" Helen retorted. "You really don't know what's going on, do you?" "I'd need more information about the what you're referring to before I could answer that," Evan mused. "I understand the offside rule. I know you never make the first or last out of an inning at third base. You're not talking about those sports axioms, are you?" "No, I was talking about the unwritten rule of never running up the score when you have a big lead," Helen quipped, before becoming more serious. "If you've been paying attention, you know the friendliest mothers are also single. You're a great dad, a good-looking guy, and have a pretty decent job. That makes you a damn good catch in their eyes." "What about the fact that I am married? Wouldn't they consider that?" Evan asked. "They have," Helen replied. "That's why they haven't actually tried to seduce you." "No one's tried that yet, have they?" "No one trying to seduce me has ever been a problem," Evan said. "I'm married, so I obviously can't be a good catch for anyone. Evan, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but we're friends, so it falls on me. The mothers all know your wife is cheating on you. If that's not bad enough, the rumor is she shut you off from sex. You don't sleep together, and it's a foregone conclusion you'll become a free agent soon. These women want to sign you up for their team as soon as you're available." Evan was stunned by Helen's revelation. How could so many people know his personal situation? Who would possibly know about his sex life or lack thereof? Then it hit him. Linda must have told that scumbag they weren't sleeping together, and he bragged about it to someone. That miserable piece of trash. "Are you referring to your wife or her lover?" Helen asked, trying to lighten the mood. "You don't seem all that surprised by the rumors. Did you already suspect Linda was cheating?" "No, I never suspected," Evan replied. "You had no idea at all?" Helen asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "I knew she was cheating. I just never suspected it," Evan responded. "You're losing me here. How could you know it without suspecting it?" Helen asked, confused. "It's pretty simple. I never suspected a damn thing until the moment I caught Jenkins banging Linda in our bed. I went from having no clue she was cheating to certain in the space of a few seconds. I totally skipped the part where I was suspicious." "That revelation raises more questions than it answers," Helen stated, still puzzled. "You saw them doing the dirty, yet you're still married and not in jail. You're not a swinger, are you? Or a guy who likes to watch? Please don't be one of those creeps." "I'm not. Don't worry about that," Evan assured her. "I decided to adjust my priorities. Spending quality time with Emily and not being a part-time dad became my main objective. Living with Linda rather than divorcing her seemed like the best way to achieve that. I started working nights, and that's always been tough on our sex life. I built a nice apartment over my detached garage, and I live there. I told Linda it was so I could sleep during the day without being disturbed. She wasn't happy about the sleeping arrangements, but Jenkins told her every time she had sex with me, he'd insist on banging her in our bed. That seemed to worry her, but not enough to stop screwing him. She thinks her affair is a secret and wants to keep it that way. I didn't tell her, but I won't be having sex with her again for any reason. I went to the clinic and got tested for STDs. I'm clean. I want to keep it that way. You're serious? You heard her talk about him like that, and you still stayed? How can she treat a guy like you so badly?" "What a jerk that guy is," Helen fumed. "All the single moms think you're a great catch. I think you might have an inflated opinion of my desirability. I've never been the movie star type. I do have a good job, so that might make me look better to some of the more desperate women," Evan offered. "Are you kidding? Look how handsome you are." "You have a wonderful smile," Helen pointed out. "You're strong, kind, smart, and great with kids. If I weren't so plain-looking and flat-chested, I'd have already tossed my hat into the ring along with my padded bra." "I think I'd better shut the hell up," Evan replied. "Thanks for being a good enough friend to tell me what people are saying and thinking. I didn't realize everyone knew I'm a cuckold. It's pretty embarrassing. I can't even keep my own wife happy. I'm a world-class loser. You're a good man who wants to be a good father to his daughter. You're strong enough to endure this so you can have a great relationship with Emily. Lisa thinks you're pretty cool too." "Who?" Evan asked, feigning ignorance. "You must be feeling better if you can tease me about Lisa's name," Helen observed with a smile. "Kitten, you're a great friend. You've kept me from getting my head stuck too far up my own butt. I just hope Emily doesn't find out." "That horse has either left the barn or is getting damn close," Helen revealed. "Lisa says Emily knows things aren't right at home. You pretty much avoid her mother. She's bound to hear something when so many people know about it." "You know what worries me?" Helen added. "Lisa is sweet on Trevor Jenkins. How awkward is that for him and for me? She's a nice girl. She has no idea what a miserable prick her father is." "I'm just glad Emily isn't the one interested in Trevor," Evan stated. "What a mess that would be. I should be happy for small favors. Lisa tells me Emily is pretty interested in Jake Ingram, but that shouldn't surprise you. She comes to every game and cheers for every move he makes," Helen said with a smile. "Yes, I've noticed her hanging around. She seems like a nice girl. I knew her dad and uncles in school," Evan recalled. "They're a good family." 2 nights later, Emily's team was playing in the first round of the regional championships. Evan realized as game time approached that he was probably more nervous than Emily. It didn't help that the usual 3 single mothers were determined to get his attention. Sarah Matthews was wearing a top that exposed a good portion of her ample chest. She kept finding reasons to lean over in front of Evan to pick something up or look for something. Evan had to admit her cleavage was impressive. Angela Morton kept her chest covered, but with a very tight and form-fitting sweater. Her small waist and flat stomach only accentuated the allure of her full, firm chest. She constantly asked Evan questions about the team and the players. Jillian Parker was less subtle. For some reason, she had to stand close enough to Evan to keep her impressive chest pressed against his arm or side. Helen gave him a knowing smirk as she handed him a soda and hot dog before returning to her seat on the first base side of the diamond. Evan noticed all 3 women found some reason to leave his general vicinity at the same time. He thought it was odd until he heard a familiar voice behind him. "I thought I'd join my husband this afternoon to watch my daughter play. I didn't realize I'd have to wade through so many admirers to reach him," Linda observed, more loudly than necessary. "What's going on, Evan?" "The game hasn't started yet, but Emily looked pretty good in warm-ups," Evan replied, trying to deflect the question. "Nice try," Linda snapped. "Why were those women hanging around you like flies on a carcass? It's a good thing you're not allergic to silicone. If you're asking me to explain the workings of the female mind, you're out of luck." "I have no idea," Evan admitted. "I'm even surprised you're here. My daughter is playing in an important game. I'm here to support her. Obviously, other mothers are here. Apparently, some of them are not here just for their kids." "You've been too busy to come to the games," Evan observed. "How did you get away from your obligations today?" Linda glanced at her husband when he mentioned her obligations. She briefly wondered if he was implying something. As quickly as the thought entered her mind, she dismissed it. If he had any suspicions, he would have been much angrier and far more confrontational. One thing she knew about Evan was that he would never tolerate her cheating. If he knew, he would have let her know in a very obvious way. "I made time. This game is important for Emily, which makes it important for me. I've hardly seen you since you went on the night shift, so I thought it would be nice to spend some time together cheering for Emily," Linda reasoned. As Linda and Evan sat down in the bleachers, she noticed she was being watched by several of the other mothers, and they didn't seem all that friendly. Linda wondered about that. What could she have possibly done to annoy the other mothers? This was the first game she had attended. She had no other interaction with any of them, so she could think of no reason for them to dislike her. Linda then noticed Helen sitting off to the side as usual. She didn't stand out in any way, although Linda noticed her hair had been professionally done, and her legs looked good in a pair of shorts that might have been a little too short, especially considering the cool temperature of the day. The game began, and Evan's attention was riveted on the field. The first two batters struck out before Emily stepped into the batter's box. Linda was worried for her daughter when she saw how fast the first pitch was and how close it came to Emily's head. The second pitch was low and away, but Emily connected solidly and lined it over first base for a stand-up double. Lisa was the next batter. Linda noticed that she seemed older, stronger, and more confident than she had been last summer. The first pitch popped into the catcher's mitt close to Lisa's head. If she hadn't leaned back, it might have hit her. Linda heard Evan chuckle as Lisa prepared for the next pitch. Trying to intimidate those two girls is a big mistake, Evan stated to those within earshot. I just hope the pitcher tries to sneak a fastball by Lisa. The other spectators nodded in agreement as the pitcher went into his delivery. He was a hard thrower, and he put something extra on the next pitch. There was a loud crack as Lisa's bat met the ball as it crossed the plate. Oohs and ahs echoed across the bleachers as the ball disappeared over the center field fence. Emily trotted across the plate and waited for her friend to touch home plate before exchanging high fives. Helen beamed with pride as her daughter circled the bases. She glanced over at Evan only to see small tears on his cheeks. He had spent countless hours working on fielding and batting with Emily and her daughter. His pleasure and pride were almost palpable. Helen was extremely grateful for the mentoring Evan had provided her daughter since their arrival. Lisa was growing into a fine young woman, and Evan had played a huge part in her development. Linda drove to the pizza shop to join Evan and Emily as the team celebrated the win. She found a parking space quite far from the door. By the time she entered the restaurant, she saw both Sarah Matthews and Angela Morton standing way too close to her husband. Their ample chests were in frequent contact with his arms, back, and chest as he helped sort out the drinks for the girls. Linda wasn't surprised when they seemed to disappear as she approached. It caused her to mentally replay a conversation she had 2 weeks prior with her lover, Derek Jenkins. "It's about time we did it in your bed, don't you think?" Derek had pushed as Linda was getting dressed after a rendezvous. "Banging you in your husband's bed really gets me going. You said you wouldn't do it in our bed again until Evan and I had sex," Linda reminded him. "I'm not comfortable with the risk. Are you telling me you haven't had sex with your husband since the day we did it in your house?" Derek asked, incredulous. "You said I should shut him off for as long as I could, and you wouldn't press me to do it here until he made love to me. He went on the night shift that day and has been sleeping in a room over the garage. We haven't even shared a kiss since." "That's just plain crazy," Derek replied. "He's way too young, and you're way too hot for him to lose interest in sex." "Is he gay? Does he have a girlfriend or something?" "He's definitely not gay," Linda insisted. "He's very masculine. He'd never cheat on me. He's just working nights. He's tired most of the time. He only shows up for dinner except on weekends when he does the yard work and things." "No normal man married to a woman like you would willingly go without, even if he worked 18-hour days," Derek stated. "He must be screwing around. That should make it easier for us to get together. He's getting his, and I'm getting what used to be his. Evan would never be unfaithful to me," Linda stated firmly. "He takes our marriage vows very seriously. He's not the type to sneak around and have an affair." "Is that what you think you're doing?" Derek demanded. "Well, no. This is just a temporary thing. Evan's been too busy with work and Emily's soccer to pay much attention to me. I deserve a little fun. I work hard to keep the house and make meals, as well as work full-time," Linda reasoned. "We both know this won't last." Derek smiled as he considered Linda's words. "I suppose you're right. Well, just enjoy the ride while it lasts. Give me a day when I can drill you in your bed. It still cranks me up." As Linda recalled Derek's words, she grew concerned as she watched the two women hovering around Evan slink away. It was obvious he had some damn attractive women with impressive chests and tight bodies who were interested. She realized she needed to protect her marriage from those women's efforts. Then she noticed Helen sitting off by herself. Linda quickly formulated a plan. She put on a big smile and sat down next to a surprised Helen. "It's good to see you again, Helen. Lisa has become quite a good ball player and she's a very nice girl. You should be proud of her." "I am," Helen admitted, wary of Linda's sudden friendliness. "Emily is doing well too. The time Evan has spent with her is paying off. He's really been a great mentor for Lisa." "Yeah, sometimes Evan is too good," Linda responded, seeing an opening for her proposal. "I'm sure you've noticed how those big-chested blondes are always hanging around him. I was wondering if you could help me out. I know Evan would never stray under normal circumstances, but he's a man, and those women are practically throwing themselves at him. How do you expect me to help you out?" Helen asked. "Spray them with cold water when they get too close?" Linda suggested. "You know I'm not able to go to most of the games and practices because of my work and other commitments. I know I can trust Evan with you. You aren't his type at all. If you would just stay close when I'm not around, I'd really appreciate it. I'm going to tell Evan he should stay closer to you and act more attentive. Those husband-stealing witches will think he's settled on you and hopefully leave him alone. I know it may be embarrassing for you to pretend like that, but it's for a good reason. You could save our marriage. Please." "Let me see if I have this right," Helen responded, disbelieving. "You're worried that these attractive, sexy single mothers might seduce Evan, so you're asking me to sort of stand in for you when he's at ball games and practices? You feel I'm a safe single mother because I don't have a big chest and I'm rather plain-looking? I didn't say you were plain. I just know Evan. For whatever reason, he's less likely to fall for you than some big-chested ex-cheerleader type. You'd be helping him keep his vows." "You feel that cheating on your spouse is a deal-breaker?" Helen questioned thoughtfully. "Would it be so terrible if he, entertained a few of those willing ladies as long as he kept you as his number one?" "I hope you're joking," Linda rejoined. "I love my husband, but I'll never tolerate cheating. It's truly the deal-breaker you mentioned. It destroys the marriage contract. I could never condone infidelity. As far as I'm concerned, the marriage would be over. You must understand how I feel. You were married for years. I understand fidelity and loyalty. It makes sense that cheating breaks the marriage contract," Helen acknowledged. "I have to agree. I have to get over to Evan. Can I depend on you to keep a close watch on him when I'm not around?" Linda asked. "Oh, yes," Helen replied with a smile. "Be sure to explain it all to Evan. I'll keep my part of the bargain. Who would be better to keep a good man celibate than a flat-chested, homely, boring woman? I wouldn't have put it quite that way, but you've pretty well covered it." "Thanks again," Linda said as she left to join her husband. "Last night, Linda wanted to talk before I left for work," Evan began at the next day's practice. "The gist of it was that there are too many sexy single moms hanging around me. She feels I would be much safer if I stayed close to you, kitten, or as she calls you, Helen. Why don't I feel safer? You're a smart man. You know you're never going to be safe around a single woman, regardless of how small her chest is and how plain she looks," Helen joked. "Kitten, you're one of the most attractive women I've ever met," Evan replied earnestly. "You're the whole package." "Wow, you just made my job harder," Helen admitted, blushing. "I'll make an appointment to have your eyes checked after the soccer season ends. You'll find I have 20/20 vision, and I'm an excellent judge of character with one glaring exception," Evan said. "I seem to have misjudged my loving wife." "I think she may have misjudged us," Helen replied. "That is, if you really find me attractive." Evan was amused by the reaction of the single mothers as Kitten remained close by his side. He spent a lot of time chatting and joking with her. The most common reactions were disbelief, followed closely by disappointment. It took less than one practice for Kitten to cut him from the herd. The team's next game required a 3-hour drive to Green Valley. It was decided that the team would travel the day before the game and spend the night at a hotel. It was hoped that the girls would be rested and fresh for their next challenge. Evan had given rides to Jill Waters' parents as well as Kitten. The discussion en route focused on the team's chances of winning the regionals and possibly the state title. They arrived at the hotel right behind the team bus. Evan helped Jill's father retrieve their luggage from the trunk. Some of the parents, including the Waters, had volunteered to chaperone the girls and would be staying at the same hotel. All the other parents had to make their reservations at different hotels since several games were being played the next day. A large number of fans and players were in town. 6 teams would compete in 3 games from different class schools. Before Emily had climbed on the bus, Evan had told her he would not be staying in the same hotel and to behave for her coaches and chaperones. He assured his daughter he would be at the team practice the next morning. "What hotel are you staying at, kitten?" Evan asked as the Waters wheeled their bags to the team hotel. "The same hotel you are," was her simple response. "I never told you which hotel I was using." "How did you find out?" Evan asked, puzzled. "I didn't," was her brief reply. "How do you know we're at the same hotel? It's pretty busy this weekend." "You may not be able to get a room at the last minute," Evan pointed out. "I'm sure something will come up," Kitten replied with a big grin, confusing Evan further. Evan arrived at his hotel a few minutes later and asked Kitten, "Do you want to see if you can get a room while I check in? I can wait around to be sure you find something." "Thanks, but I'll just wait here." "I'll be fine," she insisted. Evan was finally beginning to see the light as he checked in and picked up his room key cards. He returned to his car to find Kitten waiting. "Is there any chance you'd like one of these keys to my room?" he asked. "It's room 207. "What a thoughtful gesture," Kitten exclaimed as she stepped from the car, accepted the key, and kissed Evan on the cheek. "Let's get to bed. It's going to be a long night." Evan was far more tired getting up the next morning than he had been when he went to bed. At first he had mentally struggled with the reality of breaking his marriage vows, but Kitten helped him through it. "Let's look at this logically," Kitten had said. "Linda has not only been unfaithful, but she's agreed to shut you off sexually. Even if she hadn't, she would still be placing your health at risk by having unprotected sex with a damn tomcat. Effectively, she's made sexual relations with her both unsafe and undesirable. She's released you from your vows and your marriage contract. I haven't had sex in over a year. I've had checkups and I'm clean. You were tested after you discovered she's a cheating witch and you're clean. I went on the pill over a month ago in hopes of hooking up with you. Can you honestly give me one reason we shouldn't sleep together? Is it my looks? Your wife thought I was a perfect foil for all the big-chested, beautiful women who were showing an interest in you because she knew you'd never be attracted to me sexually. Am I just not desirable? Kitten, you're extremely desirable. Don't ever suggest you're not. I've never cheated on Linda, and it's taking some adjustment to my thinking, but you've made a great case for us getting together." "I'm ready," Evan declared with a grin. "There's something else you need to know first," Kitten replied. "Both my parents are in hospice and aren't expected to live much longer. My brother's been sending game films of Lisa to a friend of his. The friend is the soccer coach at the best prep school in the San Francisco area. If Lisa gets a soccer scholarship for next year, we'll probably move back. I like you a lot, but we're not looking at a lasting relationship. It can't last. Look at us. You're a good-looking married man with a cheating wife. I'm a plain Jane with a daughter who has a chance to get an athletic scholarship to a good university. I have to do what's best for Lisa," she concluded. "That's great to hear about Lisa," Evan stated proudly. "She's a good kid and a very talented player. I'm glad she'll have a chance to hone her skills against strong competition and gain a good education at the same time. You're the biggest reason she's being looked at by better schools. I know how much time and work you put in with her. It's ironic that you being such a good mentor to my daughter actually gave us the opportunity to move back to San Francisco and away from you. I don't think I'll be very good at a one-night stand sort of thing," Evan worried. "It might be better to forgo sex entirely than to have one night of sex and go back to being a monk." "You silly man. I said we'll probably move back to San Francisco for the coming school year. That's over 6 months away. A guy could get laid a lot in 6 months unless he's too old for a steady diet of hot sex with a very needy woman. That's something we'll just have to find out." "Will you live up to your nickname, Kitten?" Evan joked. "I will for you, big boy," Kitten promised. "When you want me, just whistle. I'll teach you how to whistle." "I've always been told my whistling is quite respectable," Evan quipped. "Then you're not doing it right," Kitten retorted. The soccer team went on to win the state championship, and Lisa was awarded a scholarship to a prestigious California prep school. Both of Kitten's parents passed away before Thanksgiving within a week of each other. Evan and Emily attended their funerals. Evan met Kitten's brother and liked him immediately. "Evan, meet my brother Marcus," Kitten introduced. "Marcus, this is Lisa's soccer mentor and our good friend Evan." "Holy cow!" Evan exclaimed. "Your name is Marcus?" "Right," agreed Kitten's brother. "Only Kitten and my folks ever call me Marcus. I answer to Mark with everyone else. What do you call my sister?" "I call her Kitten, but don't ask why," insisted Evan. "I don't think I have to ask," Mark replied with a laugh. Evan spent Thanksgiving with Linda and Emily at her parents' house. For the first time in months, Evan found himself preparing for bed with Linda. They always stayed over Thanksgiving night, and Evan couldn't come up with a good excuse to change that tradition. Linda took her time removing her clothes in front of Evan. He tried to keep his reaction subdued, but his body responded to the visual stimulation. Linda was still a very attractive woman with a nicely toned body. "We haven't slept together in a very long time," Linda said. "You must be in need of some attention by now. Make love to me." Evan felt bad about his next comment, even as he replied, "You finally admit you need to be properly taken care of. I knew you'd break. I'll be glad to top you off and put a big smile on your face for the holiday. You miserable pig. You won't be getting any sex for years with that attitude," Linda snarled. "What's wrong with you? You can just forget I was thinking of letting you even touch me." "Okay," Evan said simply as he rolled over, turning his back to Linda. He didn't second-guess his comment, though it was out of character for him. It did achieve his objective, which was avoiding sex with Linda. Evan did regret, however, that his marriage had deteriorated to its current state. Linda lay next to him, worried about Evan's snide comment, making sleep difficult. She wondered if he knew about her affair, or if he was just being miserable because they hadn't been having sex lately. She decided she would have to discuss it with Derek. He needed to forget about having sex with her in her marital bed. That demand had caused her to avoid and deny her husband, which could eventually make him suspicious. It could ruin her marriage. Evan had a routine he followed when working the night shift. He would go home, eat a small breakfast, and go to bed by 8:00 a.m. Often, he would be awakened around 2:00 p.m. by Kitten slipping into bed next to him. They would make love for an hour before she would leave to be home when Lisa returned from school. Soccer was done for the season, which allowed Evan to be showered and ready when Emily returned home from school. Evan would often catch a nap in the evening before going to work. All in all, it worked well for Evan and Kitten. One night in early December, Evan received a call from Emily shortly after arriving at work. "Dad, Lisa and I are out with Jake and Megan in Lisa's car. You said we could be out until midnight because there's no school tomorrow. We have a problem. Lisa was driving her mom's car and we have a flat tire. There's no spare in the trunk. We're stranded on Oak Street, and I'm kind of worried. I see a few guys down by the arcade looking this way." "You're broke down on goddamn Oak Street by the damn arcade?" Evan cursed. "We'll discuss this later. Is Lisa driving that Camry?" "Yeah, it's a 2019 Camry," Emily replied quickly. "I'll find a wheel and tire that'll fit it and be right there. Keep your doors locked and call the cops if you have any trouble. Take care of those girls." Evan dropped his phone in his pocket and strode onto the production floor. He quickly found the man he needed. "Tom, you still drive that Camry, don't you?" Evan asked a bearded man running a forklift. "I need a mounted tire that fits your car, and I need it right now." As Evan spoke to Tom, another thought came to him when Jack Dawson walked by. Jack was Megan's uncle. His younger sister was Megan's mother. "Jack, my daughter, and some friends are broke down on Oak Street with a flat tire and no spare. Megan is with them. I'm getting a mounted tire from Tom and headed over. I'd appreciate it if you rode along." "I have a real spare tire and not some donut," Tom declared. "Let's take my car and get down there now." Jack, Tom, and Evan immediately headed for the door to the parking lot. They were concerned about the kids being in that part of town late at night. It was no place for good kids, especially teenage girls. Linda was lying in bed, enjoying the warm glow she always felt after a romp with Derek. His phone rang and he glanced at the caller ID. "Damn it, it's Trevor. I have to answer it or he'll be bugging the hell out of me for ignoring him." Linda could only hear one side of the conversation but was concerned about what she overheard. "Why in hell are you kids down there?" "Well, that's too bad. Those boys are old enough to handle a little problem like that. Call AA. It's not my fault your mother is too damn dumb to keep a spare tire in her car." "What was that all about?" Linda asked once Derek disconnected the call. "Nothing to worry about." Derek shrugged. Trevor and a few of his buddies got stranded on Oak Street with a flat tire. His mother didn't have a spare in the car. I told him to call AA. Linda's heart sank. "Oak Street? That's not a safe place for kids to be at night. We have to go help them." "Relax," Derek said dismissively. "Trevor's a big boy. He can handle himself. And besides, it's not our problem. They'll figure it out." "Figure it out? Are you serious?" Linda snapped, sitting up in bed. "My daughter might be down there too. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I'm going." Linda quickly dressed, her mind racing with worry. If Emily was down there, she had to be there for her. She couldn't risk anything happening to her daughter. Derek sighed, realizing he had to go with her to keep the peace. "Fine, let's go. But I still think you're overreacting." As they rushed out of the house, Linda couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible could happen if they didn't get to the kids in time. Oak Street was notorious for its rough crowd, and she was terrified of what could happen to Emily and her friends. Meanwhile, Evan, Tom, and Jack arrived at Oak Street, pulling up to the stranded car. The girls were inside, visibly scared, with a few sketchy-looking guys loitering nearby, eyeing them with interest. Evan wasted no time. "Stay in the car, girls. We'll get this fixed in no time." Tom quickly got to work changing the tire while Jack kept an eye on the surroundings. Evan approached the loitering men, his demeanor calm but firm. "You gentlemen got business here?" Evan asked, his voice low and steady. One of the men smirked. "Just hanging out, man. No harm." "Well, you're hanging out too close to my daughter and her friends. I'd appreciate it if you moved along." The man's smirk faded as he recognized the seriousness in Evan's tone. With a glance at his buddies, he nodded. "Yeah, sure, no problem." They backed off, moving down the street, and Evan turned his attention back to the girls. "You're all safe now. Tom's almost done with the tire." Emily opened the car door and ran to her father, throwing her arms around him. "Dad, thank you so much. I was so scared." Evan hugged her tightly, his relief palpable. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. Let's get you all home." Just as they were finishing up, Linda and Derek arrived. Linda jumped out of the car, rushing over to Emily. "Oh my God, Emily, are you okay?" Emily nodded, still holding on to her father. "Yeah, Mom. Dad and his friends got here just in time." Linda's eyes met Evan's, a mixture of relief and guilt flashing across her face. "Thank you, Evan. I didn't know what to do." Evan simply nodded. "It's done. Let's get these kids home." The drive back was silent, the tension between Linda and Evan palpable. Derek, sensing the awkwardness, kept to himself, not wanting to make things worse. When they finally arrived home, Linda tried to talk to Evan, but he brushed her off. "We'll talk later. I'm tired." He headed to his apartment above the garage, leaving Linda standing there, feeling the weight of her actions. She knew she had crossed a line, and now she was facing the consequences. Evan lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the night's events. He had protected his daughter, but the damage to his marriage felt irreparable. He knew he couldn't go on like this forever. Something had to change. The next day, Evan made a decision. He called his lawyer and set up an appointment. It was time to plan his next move. He couldn't continue living a lie, pretending everything was okay. His marriage was over, and it was time to take the necessary steps to end it. As he hung up the phone, a sense of calm washed over him. It was time to move on, for his sake and for Emily's. He wasn't going to let Linda's betrayal define his life. He was done being the victim. It was time to take control of his future. Thanks for sticking with us through this intense story of betrayal, resilience, and taking control of your life. What would you do if you were in Evan's shoes? Would you have handled things differently? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more gripping stories like this one. See you in the next video.